DFW, also a big commercial and business powerhouse of the state, representing 30% of Texas's GDP or gross domestic product. So a lot of jobs, a lot of people coming, a lot of success can be attached to that, but a lot of issues and challenges created as well. So in terms of the absolute change, Dallas and Tarrant counties are the two core where Dallas and Fort Worth are located. They have a lot of people, and we're projecting they're going to add a lot more people, just under 1 million people over the next 20, 25 years. But what they don't really show when you just look at the pure numbers is the rates of growth year over year are actually much higher in the periphery of Dallas and Fort Worth. So like Parker County, for example, in the top 5 for year over year growth. And I bet everyone here can feel and see that around you. So you can see what used to be fields turning into like suburban, housing developments. You can see new businesses moving in, that sort of thing. Traffic congestion, of course, getting worse as the years go on. So that was a preview of the issues and challenges that we're seeing today. We might have some additional challenges for the future that are not even visible to us today. So some of those are the anticipated growth like we talked about. So, of course, how we develop matters a lot. If we continue the way we have, maybe traffic gets worse. Maybe if we see some different ways to develop, like, infill development in the bigger cities, or maybe jobs moving to where people are in the suburbs, that could change things. We have some financial challenges. So how do we put transportation infrastructure in places that need it? When you have rising costs, you have, of course, needs outpacing the revenues available. So we'll talk about that. And then emerging technologies, which is a nice focus area here at Weatherford College. We take a look at those and we're monitoring and seeing how we can leverage those to kind of help us move forward. And then air quality, of course, is a big concern because we are in a non-attainment area for air quality. So we have, unhealthy exceedances of ozone. We monitor air quality, and then we have some future things coming along the way that we'll talk about. So, looking at the roadway congestion that I mentioned, we produced these maps. This is from our travel demand model. And it outlines, what the picture looks like today. So you see the worst congestion in the center of the region, kind of where the bigger cities are and where a lot of the growing suburbs are. Collin County, Benton County, that sort of thing. And so right now we can come up with this number of cost of congestion by using the value of time and multiply that with the number of people who are spending however many hours in traffic. So region-wide, it totals up to $13.2 billion in cost of congestion delay. Now, in the future, this is what it looks like if you add all these people going up to like 11.4 million people, and everyone's driving, so it creates more congestion. So it more than doubles the cost of congestion regionally. So you think that's bad. If we don't build the plan's recommendations, this is including those recommendations that are in the plan, it gets much, much worse. So this is called our no-build scenario. So if we don't do anything else to the transportation system, traffic just kind of gets out of control. The cost of congestion goes up to like nearly 60 billion. So clearly we have to do something. At the same time, we know that even recommending what we can right now, it's not enough. So we're kind of at a tipping point right now in the planning world and in our community where we need to be thinking about other options for the way that we develop and other options for how to move people around to their key destinations. So for context here, I know I just gave you like a kind of negative picture here, but if you look at other major metro areas, larger cities, of course, you expect, like when you have 20 million people or 18 million people, you expect traffic congestion. So that's New York and Los Angeles, 1 and 2 metro areas for population. If you look at the smaller areas, you'd think, okay, smaller areas are going to be more congested. They just don't have the infrastructure built out that we do here. But even compared to similar sized areas, they still have more congestion than we do. And this is a testament to all the work that's been done over the past 20 to 30 years to build out our infrastructure. Back in 2009 timeframe, we had a lot of private investment come in, so we have the toll roads now that go through some key areas. And we don't have that paradigm anymore. We're not building toll roads that way. Now it's more about management of traffic. But you can see how that has really helped us to avoid the worst outcomes that some of these other cities are seeing, like Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. So I talked about other options for moving people around. This is kind of why we feel that we're at this tipping point. So if you look at our total population for 2045 of 11.4 million people, we can kind of slice it up based on our forecasts and our data. That it looks like 60% of the region's population is projected to live outside of a transit authority boundary. So places like in Parker County, for example, or places in Hunt County, or in the periphery, they're not in a transit authority, not in Dallas Area Rapid Transit, Trinity Metro, Denton County Transportation Authority. So that coverage is really quite limited to the urbanized area. One of the nice things we have going on right now that is just kicked off is a study called Transit 2.0, Transit 1.0, how we kind of think of it. It happened about a decade or so ago when we took a look at governance structure. How can we fund more transit? This time we'll do the same, but we're kind of looking at, okay, how can we increase those boundaries so that there's more service to more places that need it, especially areas that we think are going to be growing over time. So that's a nice kind of plug for a new transit study that's coming. For financial challenges, we have a lot of different pressures on our transportation funding. It used to be the case that we had gas taxes and people would drive everywhere and they pay gas tax in a few cents every time they filled up and then pull it all together. That would fund the transportation system. Well, we haven't seen an increase in gas taxes in 30 years. So inflation has really chipped away at that. Other sources of revenue have come online to kind of help bolster funding for transportation, but it's not enough necessarily compared with just the rate of growth that we're seeing. So TxDOT did a little comparison a while back. It was a snapshot in time of like 10 years. They found that the motor fuel taxes on the revenue side increased by 13%. That's great. But then the costs went up 83% in the same time period. So you can see how costs are just way outpacing the available revenues. And we know that as we see electric vehicles and in the future even automated vehicles, they may not even be paying gas taxes. So that's going to chip away at the revenue even further. We'll have to have a diversity of revenue sources. Now, on this note of autonomous vehicles, emerging technology is something that we're kind of in the monitoring phase for. So obviously automated and connected vehicles, they kind of go together. Electric vehicles, they also dovetail nicely. We just don't know how a lot of this is going to shake out. There's a lot of private investment in automated and connected vehicle pilot programs, different things being tested and tried, especially in the freight and goods movement space. So, depending how things go, if autonomous vehicles just utilize the current transportation system, we lost our screen. So if autonomous vehicles kind of use the same transportation infrastructure, and they basically they don't need any specialized infrastructure, and we kind of develop in the same way we have with a lot of single-family homes kind of spread out, sprawling out, then AVs may not really have a big impact on traffic or other things aside from just allowing access to more people who couldn't drive before. So people who are older, maybe don't drive anymore, or the younger people who are not old enough to drive. So, aside from providing them access, really a lot of the same outcomes. So where we see a lot of the potential benefit is if we see some changes happening together at the same time. Like, how are we developing as a region? Maybe automated vehicles are fully just electric, so emissions go way down. You're increasing access. A lot of good things could happen, but we just don't know how this is going to go. Urban air mobility is something, too, that we are monitoring. We have an aviation team that's very much plugged in there, but it's something, again, that's a lot being done on the private side, and then the government role would be in governance and regulations. So again, we'll just have to see how that shakes out. That would be a completely different paradigm to have cars, car-like, type of vehicle kind of take off vertically and then just go where you want it to go. A lot needs to happen in order for that to become reality. So yeah, quite a ways away from that. Drones are a nice thing that we're also very much plugged in, called UAS, or uncrewed aircraft systems. And so those really, right now, it's all about the regulations, about safety and ensuring you know where to fly and what those can be used for. So that's kind of the urban aspects for air mobility, vertical mobility. Now, mobility as a service. This one is a concept where maybe you do not need to own a car yourself to get around. You just maybe have your smartphone. You can just order your transportation, whatever mode it is. Maybe there's a regional, a regional transit authority. You can just order a ride through there. Maybe there's a car that can take you somewhere. Maybe then you can rent a little scooter, all in the same thing, and then you're just able to get wherever you need to go, just independently through one platform. So that, again, a lot of things have to come together, really, to make that a reality, but it's something we're monitoring. The other two, high-speed rail, this is kind of a funny one to put in emerging technologies, considering that high-speed rail has been in place for a really long time in other parts of the world. But it's emerging in the U.S. And so we have the privately funded Dallas to Houston high-speed rail line that's kind of working through its process, has the federal go-ahead, and then to have a station in Dallas. Now, our part in it is to be able to connect Dallas and Fort Worth through a one-seat ride that would then allow you to go from Houston to Fort Worth and then potentially even beyond. So, but right now we're just focusing on the Dallas to Fort Worth piece. So that's a study that we're engaged in, have been for a number of years, and we'll just continue through those processes to see if that can be implemented. Right now there's some buzz about at the federal level, some support for the Texas high-speed rail compared to the California project, which has kind of shrunk in its line and what it will connect, and the cost meanwhile has grown. So we'll see how this shakes out. A lot being monitored overall in emerging technologies. Now, artificial intelligence, this one has really exploded in the past couple of years. Two main branches to this for planning, for planners. One branch is, can this enhance how we do our planning work? So a lot of benefits there and a lot of things being tested. The other branch is like practical implementation. So can we use AI in cool ways? Like, let's say you had a crosswalk at a stoplight. Maybe there would be some kind of detection if it's nighttime and the infrastructure can detect when there's a pedestrian. Then through AI automation and some other processes, maybe kick on a street light when somebody's crossing just to help increase safety and illuminate the person who's crossing. So there's a lot of interesting things that are kind of far off. I think right now for government settings, it's all about how can we streamline our work, because governments can be kind of slow. A lot of our stuff takes a really long time. Even projects can take anywhere from 5 to 20 years to go from idea to implementation. So there's a lot of potential for AI to help in the planning area to kind of streamline some things and give us info we never even knew about before. All right, now air quality being this last one to mention in the issues. So I mentioned air quality and the ozone. We monitor the precursors to ozone. which are the what we call NOx and VOC, or nitrous oxides and volatile organic compounds. And those together with like light and heat, they come together to form ozone. So we monitor those, and I don't have the graph here on this, but we have seen that we're kind of trending in the wrong direction over the last few years. And lately, we've been reclassified as in severe non-attainment for ozone. Now, add to that, very recently, we're still kind of working through this, but we're going to have to start to look at fine particulate matter as well, which is that PM 2.5. And so that, a lot of this has to do with just background pollution that might come from Mexico or somewhere else. There's a lot of industrial activity kind of come on the jet stream as it blows through and bring some of that to the region. So we can't really control it, but we're still responsible for trying to improve it under the federal regulations. So we have a lot of programs designed to help with this. They're low-cost programs. The money that's put into programs, it's money that is not for infrastructure projects, but it might be things like education, could be educating people who drive trucks on idling, why that's not a good idea or what you can do instead. So a lot of different strategies there. Education campaigns for bicycle and pedestrian safety, for inducing a switch to transit where it's possible. So all these kind of things come together to try to help air quality improve. Okay, so how does that all kind of feed into the plan and the planning process? So this is where my team comes in. So the plan, we have to have a demographic forecast. Why do we think about the future? In short, because we have to. This is a federal requirement. So areas over 50,000 in population have to have a metropolitan planning organization and a long-range plan, as well as a short-term kind of accounting of all the projects that we're recommending. So for the long-range plan, we have to make one at least once every 4 years. We have to go out at least 20 years. We can go out more if we want to. And the plan has to respond to a region's goals, identify policies, programs, and projects that help to achieve the air quality goals that are set by federal or state regulation. And then the other important thing about the plan is it guides the expenditure of federal and state funds. So we do have a bit about financial planning that I'll cover. So these are the main components of the plan. So performance measures actually got a boost last time because we implemented a new structure to be able to measure how we're doing on the plan's goals. So we have now a nice nesting structure of our goal themes. There are 9 goals. And then we have performance measures linked to each of those to kind of give us an idea of how we're doing. And that's not required. We go above and beyond the regulations in that sense. But we pair that up with our technical processes like project selection, project prioritization, and we also consider a lot of things just all throughout our process. So things like equity, as in reaching traditionally underserved populations, ensuring fair distribution of benefits and burdens, those sorts of things. We also have to ensure financial constraint, meaning we can't spend more money than we can reasonably expect to receive. We put all that together, and that really the 3 key things recommended in the plan are policies, programs, and projects. So on the performance-based planning, just quickly, we did that structure to find out how we're doing on our plan's goals. So we'll continue that for our next upcoming plan, which is called Mobility 2050. And then we are looking to just make sure that if there are any tweaks to the goals based on our public need, our policy priority, and technology, that all those measures will be updated to make sure that we still have that structure in place. Those goals that I mentioned, so we have the 4 themes of mobility, quality of life, system sustainability, and then implementation. So broadly, we have a couple things here. There are like process goals, so things like developing cost-effective projects and programs, or making sure that we have timely implementation of projects, because the longer you go out to implement something, the more it's going to cost. So to keep costs down, we want to do things sooner. We also have the people side of things. So how do we encourage sustainable development, make sure that people have choices, we're supporting driving, transit, or whatever mode people wish to use. How do we support efficiency of the transportation system and make sure people have access to it? So kind of our people side of things. And then lately, because I mentioned that we're kind of in this tipping point given our region's growth, we're also kind of tipping from the old historical way that we used to do things, which was from the 60s on. Like, there's a big national push to make a nationwide interstate highway system connect the nation. So we really achieved that by about the 90s, and from then on, it was just about the final build out, adding the last pieces. And now we're kind of in this time where there's a focus on reliability, so about managing demand, managing the efficiency of the transportation system. We will oftentimes, because a lot of that older infrastructure is aging out, whatever the new projects come through, they're mostly about, hey, let's go ahead and modernize this facility. While we're in there, we can add a lane, but for the most part, the big capital infrastructure investment needs to be in our transit world. So what's new for our upcoming plan? It's called Mobility 2050. The current one is 2045 update. That was adopted a couple of years ago. For this next one, we go out another 5 years into the future, and then we'll just have a comprehensive review of all those recommendations. And then we have, of course, every plan we have to take a fresh look at technology. Technology really answers how for us. So it's about not just doing something for the sake of technology, there's something shiny. We want to make sure that whatever we do, technology is enhancing or making something better, not just doing it to do it. Also, we'll, of course, meet all the requirements in terms of consistency amongst all of our different documents, ensuring that projects are logged in a way that they can move forward. And then financial planning, this is one of the big ones that we have to do. So we're forecasting revenue right now for the next plan. And then we will, once we have all of our project details, we'll calculate up how much everything costs. Turns out, most of the time we do this, we don't have enough money. So we also have to prioritize. And that's the financial constraint part. It's about balancing the priorities with the available revenues to ensure that we're making the best investment. This is the current plan's total. And so if we break it up by our principles of number one, to maximize what we have, that's kind of our grand total. Our maintenance and operations is by far the biggest expense there, and that's for both transit and for roadway side of things. At the bottom is more of that strategic infrastructure investment, so more of like the capital project side. And so you can see how transit and roadway are getting fairly similar amounts of investment, but very different goals there. One being efficiency of the roadway system, and then transit about maximizing and increasing service areas and coverage. So for our funding, we have, like I mentioned earlier, a few pressures on funding. In our older structures, like several plans ago, it was kind of a predictable state where we had like our revenues coming through that we knew would always come through. Gas taxes and registration fees were the biggest part of that. And then periodically, when needed, we would get these infusions from federal or state government. Then in recent plans, our gas taxes have gone down, our registration fees might be kind of stable. These things tend to diminish over time, and then we would utilize the flexibility afforded in the regulations to be able to say, hey, we think gas taxes have not been increased in a long time. They're going to increase by, let's say, 5 cents at these junctures, calculate it out, and regardless of where the money comes from, that's our proxy for determining any extra revenue that we think will be coming in the future. So then, as you can see, we've had the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. or also known as the BIL, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And so that really infused a lot of extra money in. So it's not gas taxes, but that source came through just as we kind of anticipated. And now that's flowing through those traditional channels. So we're kind of starting that cycle over again. Checking to see that our baseline funding, how's it doing? Are we decreasing? Are we stable? And then enhancing that where we need to. So for future plans, there's a lot we have to keep monitoring on this. So things like electric vehicles, they don't pay any gas tax in, obviously. So the state legislature just added a registration fee for EVs. So those kind of things kind of pop up, and that'll be a new thing to add to our Mobility 2050 plan. But yeah, we'll just continue to monitor these revenues. They recently, in the past 10 years or so, they've added at the state level oil and gas severance taxes. So a portion of that gets siphoned off to transportation. Also, on a state level, the sales tax has now also a revenue source going to transportation. So it's really actually quite good because we're diversifying and getting away from one single source. When that decreases, we'll still have, a lot of fallback there to work with. But in the future, as some of these structural kind of underpinnings evolve, there may be other things. Some states elsewhere are looking into or have implemented like indexing. So you could say gas tax will be changing based on inflation. So it'll go up or down. That's something that other states have done. There's a lot of talk and a lot of pilot testing going on for vehicle miles travel fees or VMT fees. Some call them road user charges, road use charges. So especially in the West, like California, Oregon, and so forth, they've been testing implementation of that. Like, how could we charge based on how much you're using the system? Gas tax used to be a proxy for that, but is no longer a good proxy for that. So just kind of emerging there. And then there's another kind of thing we're kind of monitoring way off into the future, like technology as a transportation mode. So like we know that if you're able to telecommute, it's removing a trip from the roadway system. So what would that look like on a bigger scale? That's something that we're kind of interested in looking at. So plan recommendations. These will be the current ones, and then we'll see updates to those for this upcoming plan. But here's who we work with. So for project recommendations, we do the planning work. We don't do the implementation work. So TxDOT and TTA, of course, they do a ton of work. It's more operational in nature. Projects are ongoing all the time. And our plan kind of gathers up all the info we know as a snapshot in time, captures all that so that we meet that federal requirement and we can keep moving forward. We also work with the transit authorities. What's kind of cool is transit authorities, we work with them on, getting what projects they have going on up to a certain point. Maybe they go out 10 years, maybe 20. We might go out even further. So that gives us a chance as a COG to do some planning for the out years and say, hey, here's what it might look like if we did all buses everywhere, if we did rail here and here, that doesn't exist. And some of those can come from us and potentially turn into projects implemented by these authorities. That's kind of how we do the coordination back and forth there. We also work with local governments, so counties and cities just across the region, to get projects cataloged in our plan. So this is what the recommendations look like in the current plan. This QR code has the online map tool, so you can tap on one of those recommendations and see information about it, like how much does it cost, what year do we think it's going to be ready, how many lanes is it currently in, will it go to, all that sort of information. So this will see some changes for the next plan as certain projects near completion, they'll be removed from the plan, and then new ones may go in their place. And then for our level of congestion that you saw earlier, we actually did this a couple of plans ago. This was a policy decision made by the Regional Transportation Council. that we don't want to just implement toll roads anywhere or toll managed lanes anywhere. So really the boundary there is to show where we think would be a good fit for toll managed lanes to go. And within that area, that's 13% of the region's land area, but it's 78% of the region's congestion. So we want to be really targeted in how we approach that. The boundary will be revisited as part of Mobility 2050, just because we may have some different patterns of congestion that warrant a different outline. In particular, we're thinking 35W going up towards Denton may need to be included in the boundary depending on the levels of congestion that are coming through in our model. But so this is what it looks like when you put the recommendations in. So we're pretty good about, this is the boundary where we want to be strategic, and then that's kind of where things shake out. So transit recommendations, a lot of the green ones, regional rail, are those ones that I mentioned that COG initiates a study on. We do have the one under construction with the yellow outline, and that's the Silver Line. So really these follow the Transit Authority boundaries right now, and we don't know what's going to come out of our new study, Transit 2.0, but we're hopeful that it will address the issue that, we're seeing growth in a lot of areas that just don't have transit. They're not in a transit authority. So how do we move forward? So these will be looked at as part of our Mobility 2050 process as well. And the last one is the active transportation. So we don't actually have any purview over very localized things like sidewalks, but we do have offer like planning and coordination with local governments on those things. Where we kind of come in is on the kind of trail side of things. So we have a regional VeloWeb that our sustainable development team has kind of put together. This was probably 10 to 20 years ago, and they maintain this. And then here and there, these are mostly funded in cooperation between us and local governments, and so they get done just a little bit at a time, but there's a lot of progress being made. So these are, you can see the existing in purple and the planned in orange. So there's a lot still planned that needs to be implemented, but we kind of work through those as funding permits. And we really would like to see this build out of active transportation networks so that it would be possible if you had like a 5-mile commute, you could do that safely by bicycle or however else. All right, so public involvement, that's kind of what the plan recommends. And then this is mostly going to cover for our Mobility 2050, how we're handling our public involvement. So right now we've got a survey that's open, and I'll have the link to it later on. And we also have the online mapping tool called Map Your Experience, which is online anytime. It's not part of the plan, but we use it for the plan. And so this is what we've been hearing so far in those two major channels. One being that people perceive that transit is very much desired but lacking in a lot of areas. So people are supportive of expanding that network. Of course, people are seeing the development and growth all around them and talking about traffic congestion. Now, in terms of the path forward, there are a lot of ideas out there coming through, like maybe we should widen these areas, maybe we should not widen these areas, maybe we should be focusing on alternatives. One of the misconceptions is that we can just kind of take all of our roadway money and shift it over to transit. That's very often not the case. Funds will have like different restrictions on them. Like this fund can only be used for non-tolled facilities. This can only be used for transit. This can only be used for roadways, etc. So when it comes to funding, we have to not just like slice up the pie differently, but we have to make the pie bigger in a lot of cases. Okay, so I mentioned the two major channels, and this is how you get to them. So if you feel inspired by what you've heard and you want to put in your point of view on it, there are open-ended boxes on here. So we actually are reading all the comments, and we're actually testing how we can use AI to help kind of put that all together It's really nice because we always have a human in the loop. We're all humans doing this plan and working on this together. So yeah, we're kind of cautiously using AI to see how it can maybe help us to understand our vast sums of qualitative data coming through. And so far, it's looking really nice. So yeah, if you want to do the survey, it'll ask in the first section how the transportation system is working for you in terms of accessing key destinations like jobs, healthcare, education, healthy food, and then map your experience. For this, you drop a pin on the map and describe an issue you're seeing. While we don't directly go and like fix that pothole, it might give us a picture of like regional maintenance needs, where we can then reach out to cities and say, hey, City of Weatherford, we're seeing a lot of these types of comments. Were you aware of these? Or, what is your public works working on? Do you have a priority list or anything? So it kind of allows that kind of engagement with our local partners. And then other ways you can stay connected. Of course, we have public meetings in Arlington. It's quite far for a lot of people, so we have virtual options as well. You can view it, I think it's on YouTube, and you can call in, you can text in, you can email, and there's a lot of options with those. We're also on social media, and you can email us directly as well, and then we'll log your comment and respond if your email is asking for a response or you have a question or something like that. Some people just want to give us their thought and be done with it, and we're okay with that too. So either which way. But here's my contact information, so should you have any questions, want to connect into the transportation planning process or whatever, you can just feel free to reach out. So I'll give it a pause here, let everyone kind of digest that. Does anyone have any questions that have come up about anything at all? Planning, longer term? Yes,
So back at the start of your presentation, you talked about the metro area.
Yeah.
How is metro area defined?
Yeah, so it's a federal designation, and we use the census for that as well. So we have the federal urbanized area for one. We have actually 2 or 3 urbanized areas. We also have, for our metropolitan planning organization, it comes with a metropolitan planning area boundary. So that's the 12 county region surrounding Dallas and Fort Worth. We go back to it. Like you can see on this map, the outline is our NPA. So that's what we use for all of our planning analysis and everything. So it'll be 12 counties within that. The Council of Governments, confusingly, is bigger than that and includes 16 counties. So it'll also include a couple more counties to the south, southeast and southwest.
So is it defined geographically or
Yes.
by population?
So it's, well, this is something that we revisited about 15 years ago, but I'm not sure how they define the boundary. It's a federal thing, so it might be based on population. It used to be kind of weirdly cut off, not following county boundaries, and then in their new designation, it followed county lines. So it's probably a mix of those two things.
So here's my question. I know it was like, didn't you ask one? Yeah, no, here's the real question. So the projections, like in the projections that you have about population
Yeah.
and the demographics and what is needed by 2045 or 2050 or whatever, those are all projections assuming that the metro area stays the same. But
Yes.
it's possible that it gets redefined and becomes larger.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we have experienced that. The MPA before was smaller and it got bigger. So the nice thing about long range planning is that we're not locked into the plan for eternity or 20 years or whatever, 28 years. We have to do one at least once every 4 years. So when something major like that happens, if we're in the middle of plan cycle, we're not going to develop one, we can always choose to do that. And we do respond to major issues like that by just creating a whole new plan when it's time.
Is it ever included in part of your projection plan, though, that possibility? So is it like, here's how this would change if the area was increased in these ways or in these ways?
Yeah, so we don't include it in the official forecasts and things, but we do look at some of those things in an unofficial capacity. So we'll take our demographics and we'll, in that process, kind of run through some sketch planning that really never gets published out because it's not our official boundary or anything. But we'll kind of look at, oh, this change might result in this other change, and so what would that look like? You know, and that'll help inform us and keep ahead of things. But yeah, it's more like internal scenario planning in that case.
Thank you.
Sure. All right.
I've got multiple questions, but I'll ask one at a time. So one of your slides, you talked about different travel options and transit options, and you had technology as an option. And I'm curious, did COVID give you a sense of what enhanced telecommunications would look like, or telecommunications was? And was that sort of built into this plan moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that's kind of tricky about things is we do snapshot in time, and a lot of our modeling processes are older. So our travel demand model particularly has like a validation year. They have their own regulations too, so I'm glad another team gets to deal with those. But they have older data, older assumptions about current travel behavior. And right now is actually the time when they're revisiting that, and they're looking at things, what they call peak hour spread. So that means like with a lot of people having telecommuting as an option and more flexibility in their day when they work, we are seeing in actual data that the peak hour used to be like 4 to 6:30 or something like that. And now it's like 3 to like 8. And it's not as high levels of congestion, it's just spread out. Yeah, so those are the kinds of things that are now being kind of pulled into this model. And we're kind of at a decision point with that where we're like, well, should we wait and see when things are very stable? Or do we think they're stable enough right now to be able to fold that in? So, yeah.
There's an element of game plan to this, isn't
Yes,
there?
there is. Yeah, definitely. So, great question. Does anyone else have any questions?
I've got another one if nobody else does, so just want to jump over now. So you talked about the goals. One of the goals, I can't remember what slide it was and what the exact language, yeah, there it was, I think you just passed it. Maybe not.
That's all right.
There, that's it.
Yeah.
Goals. So under quality of life,
Mhm.
enhance environment and lifestyles, how do you guys define that? How are you thinking about that as a goal, and what does it mean to meet the goals associated with that?
Yeah, I wish I had the full chart with me, which I don't, but it's in our plan document on our website. So these are a little bit condensed language, and the performance measure framework is great because it spells those things out. But a lot of this language, the goals were first done in this iteration in about 2011 or so. So that's why we want to kind of look at our public data and our policy priorities to make sure they're still working for us. But that quality of life section is all very squishy, subjective stuff. But essentially, it's about making sure that active transportation efforts that we do are covered in the goals. And then it's stated in a way that's broad enough to where we're not limited in how we approach that. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the language. And a lot of times, there's, for government in particular, there's certain winds of political change where like certain words will be taboo. We can't say climate change, for example. And luckily that's kind of softened, but it's the same with like the active transportation where at a certain point in time, you couldn't really spell out those things. And now there's a lot more acceptance, there's a different climate, you know, and we're allowed to kind of move forward with certain wording. So yeah, a lot goes into the wording there. If that answers you at all.
Just following up on Greg's question here, you have quantifiable measures for that, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Say like time travel or time in car or something like that.
Yeah, we have, so those are part of the mobility ones, I believe, but we do have those measures. And then we also have like number of miles of existing VeloWeb system versus like planned, so we can see that improving and increasing over time. We can't really track like bike ped activity, it's very hard to do, but that's kind of how we get at that. There's a few other measures like that.
And I have one last question, I'm sorry, but I
Yeah,
was
go right
similar to these, honestly, you, on one of your slides, you had issues that you faced, so one of them
Yeah.
was political action.
Yeah,
I teach government, can you elaborate?
yeah.
What
Like on this one here, we've
Yes.
got like the pressures. So the political side of things is basically for revenue. We can't just, as the cog, say, "Oh, okay, we need more revenue. Let's just go gather it." It's done at the state level or the local level. We have no taxing authority or anything, but other entities do. So our involvement is in doing studies that show a need and purpose for things, and then we kind of have to bring that to the policy board. You know, it goes up and up the chain until there's another entity basically taking action and making things happen.
Would political inaction be more active?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of times that's the case. Well, but the state legislature in Texas has been very good about recognizing transportation needs, and then they put, those new sources of funding from various places into transportation. So, I think the action is there lately.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Just is there much appetite in the metropolitan area for more mass transit, like rail?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of funny because a lot of times we advocate for greater bus access because it's lower cost and it's very flexible. And you can use the existing transportation system. Like rail, you have to build a dedicated, track and rail and all that. The vehicles are costly, huge capital investment up front, but people really love it. And I think because light rail is seen as something being on a rigid schedule that's, and it's going to connect to destinations like in perpetuity. So I think people really enjoy that. And then people just love trains. So there's a lot of support for rail, light rail, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the New York subway system. I saw pictures of Queens in like 1911 where the rail line was going out and there was 3 houses on either side of it, and now it's been developed. So I was wondering if some of the outlying areas would see development based on having that access.
Yeah, that's something that we do try to model in some of our studies. We, of course, would love to have transit-oriented development throughout, at different stations where you have housing, you have jobs, and you're connecting things where you have options to move about. There's a lot of complexities to that, there's issues of how do we get the right-of-way that we need for a rail line? That's very difficult in this age. You can't just bulldoze through anywhere. You have to be sensitive to people and culture and everything. So, yeah.
Other questions?